Long before maps showed blue emptiness across the Pacific Ocean, and long before anyone imagined continents scattered like stepping stones across water, the first Pacific sailors looked out at the horizon and saw not danger or absence, but pathways waiting to be learned. These early seafarers came from islands Southeast Asia, where coastlines, tides, and seasonal winds taught generations how water moved, how skies behaved, and how patience often mattered more than strength. Instead of fearing the open ocean, they studied it closely, noticing how waves bend around islands, how birds flew with purpose at certain times of day, and how clouds gathered differently above unseen land. Canoes built for these journeys were not simple boats, but carefully engineered vessels shaped from wood, fiber, and deep experience designed to balance speed, stability, and survival across long distances. Double-hulled canoes and outriggers allowed sailors to travel farther than single boats ever could, distributing weight intelligently while reducing the risk of capsizing in unpredictable conditions. Every part of these vessels reflected planning because storage for water, food, tools, plants, and animals had to support weeks, sometimes months, of travel without resupply. Navigation depended on memory rather than instruments, as sailors carried mental maps formed from star paths, wind directions, wave patterns, and the timing of celestial movements. Star navigation played a central role because sailors memorized how constellations rose and set across different seasons, using these movements as reliable guides during long nights at sea. During daylight, navigators read the ocean itself, interpreting subtle shifts in swell direction and rhythm that hinted at land far beyond visible range. Bird behavior offered further clues, since certain species traveled daily between land and sea, revealing distance and direction when observed carefully. Cloud formations also became signs, because islands influenced moisture and wind, creating distinct shapes that experienced sailors learned to recognize. Knowledge passed orally from elders to apprentices, often through chants and stories that encoded navigation information into memorable rhythms. These learning methods ensured accuracy while allowing flexibility because memory adapted more easily than written charts under changing conditions. Sailing crews functioned as cooperative units, where leadership depended on trust, experience, and shared responsibility rather than rigid command. Every person aboard contributed, whether steering, adjusting sails, maintaining balance, or watching signs that others might miss. These journeys were rarely random because exploration followed logic based on environmental clues rather than reckless wandering. Island hopping expanded gradually, with new lands becoming bases for further movement, creating chains of settlement across enormous distances. Each successful voyage expanded knowledge, turning previously unknown waters into familiar routes remembered collectively. Plants such as taro, yams, bananas, and breadfruit traveled with sailors, ensuring food security wherever landfall occurred. Animals, including pigs, chickens, and dogs, joined these journeys, reflecting deliberate preparation rather than accidental drift. Settlement required cooperation immediately because clearing land, building shelters, and establishing gardens demanded shared effort from the start. Island environments differed greatly, ranging from volcanic highlands to coral atolls, forcing settlers to adapt techniques while preserving core knowledge. Fishing strategies changed depending on reefs, lagoons, and open water access, demonstrating flexible intelligence rather than rigid tradition. Social organization remained portable, carrying family structure, leadership customs, and spiritual beliefs across the ocean. Ancestors remained present conceptually, guiding decisions and reinforcing continuity despite physical distance from original homelands. Rituals honored successful voyages, safe arrivals, and abundant harvests, reinforcing confidence in both skill and belief. Humor played a role during long journeys, easing fear and boredom while strengthening bonds among crew members. Stories told aboard canoes connected travelers to home even while moving away from it. Children born on newly settled islands inherited both local landscapes and ancient knowledge simultaneously. Language evolved gradually, retaining shared roots while adapting to new environments and experiences. Trade developed between islands, exchanging resources, skills, and stories across water rather than land. These networks turned the ocean into a highway rather than a barrier. Navigation knowledge became a source of respect and authority because survival depended directly on competence. Errors carried consequences, encouraging careful teaching and disciplined learning. Yet mistakes also became lessons incorporated into future journeys. Time moved differently at sea, measured by stars, mills, and stories instead of hours. Patience became habitual, trust became essential. Fear existed, but it did not dominate. The Pacific gradually filled with meaning, as names, memories, and routes layered significance onto water once considered empty. From island to island, the world expanded. Distances shrank in human understanding. Isolation transformed into connection. The ocean listened. As settlements multiplied and navigation refined further, the Pacific became a vast inhabited world shaped by movement rather than borders, setting the stage for understanding how these first sailors built lasting cultures, complex identities, and enduring legacies that would continue unfolding across the ocean in the chapters ahead. As generations followed one another across islands separated by long stretches of open water, the knowledge carried by Pacific sailors deepened, becoming more precise, more layered, and more confidently shared across families, clans, and entire island communities. Navigation was no longer only a skill held by a few specialists because basic understanding of winds, stars, and currents spread through society, shaping how people talked about direction, time, and distance in everyday life. Young learners absorbed this awareness naturally, hearing elders discuss swells and seasons with the same familiarity used to discuss gardens, fishing spots, or family histories. This widespread knowledge created a culture that understood movement as normal rather than risky, encouraging curiosity supported by preparation instead of fear driven by the unknown. Canoe building traditions grew increasingly sophisticated as builders refined shapes, lashings, and sail designs to match specific routes, weather patterns, and ocean conditions. Materials were chosen carefully because wood type, fiber strength, and balance determined whether a vessel endured weeks at sea or failed after a single storm. Building a canoe became a community project involving rituals, cooperation, and shared responsibility that strengthened social bonds long before any journey began. These rituals acknowledged both human skill and environmental forces, reinforcing respect rather than control. Voyages followed planned timing, often aligned with seasonal wind shifts that favored outward travel and reliable return routes. This attention to timing reveals strategic thinking rather than spontaneous wandering. As island groups expanded, contact between distant regions remained active, maintained through purposeful travel rather than permanent separation. Stories, tools, songs, and marriage ties moved along sea routes, creating cultural continuity across thousands of miles of ocean. Differences emerged gradually, shaped by local environments, yet shared roots remain visible in language, beliefs, and social structures. Island societies valued cooperation deeply because isolation made conflict costly and unity essential. Leadership therefore emphasized wisdom, experience, and generosity rather than dominance. Navigators earned respect through reliability as successful voyages strengthened trust across entire communities. Failure did not bring shame alone because learning from error protected future travelers. This collective attitude encouraged honesty rather than secrecy. Environmental knowledge expanded alongside navigation as settlers learned to read reefs, weather patterns, soil types, and plant behavior unique to each island. Agricultural practices adapted creatively, balancing imported crops with local resources. Fishing techniques diversified, reflecting careful study of marine ecosystems rather than overuse. Sustainability emerged from necessity long before it became a modern concept. Spiritual beliefs supported this balance by framing humans as participants within larger systems rather than masters above them. Ancestral guidance remained central, connecting past voyages to present decisions. Ceremonies honored not only gods but also skill, patience, and collective effort. Music, dance, and chant preserved navigational knowledge while strengthening identity. These performances transformed technical information into shared memory accessible to all ages. Humor continued to lighten long journeys, reinforcing resilience during uncertainty. Laughter helped transform tension into focus rather than panic. Children raised within these traditions grew up expecting to understand the sea, not escape it. Ocean literacy shaped worldview, encouraging awareness beyond immediate surroundings. When storms arrived, sailors relied on preparation rather than prayer alone. When land remained invisible for days, trust in knowledge replaced doubt. Canoes carried not just people and supplies, but confidence built across generations. Even when voyages ended unexpectedly, communities adapted by rebuilding rather than abandoning movement entirely. Archaeological traces later revealed this persistence through patterns of settlement rather than isolated accidents. The Pacific world thus grew interconnected without centralized control. No single ruler directed expansion. No written map dictated routes. Instead, shared intelligence guided exploration steadily. This decentralized system proved remarkably durable. When later outsiders arrived, they often misunderstood the sophistication behind these journeys. European maps labeled vast areas empty despite centuries of human connection. Yet, islanders continued navigating according to knowledge older than those charts. Modern science now confirms many traditional methods, validating swell navigation and star-based guidance. This recognition highlights the depth of observation achieved without modern instruments. The first sailors did not conquer the Pacific. They learned it patiently, they listened carefully. They remembered collectively. They adapted respectfully. Their legacy remains visible in languages, cultures, and navigation revivals practiced today. Modern Polynesian voyaging canoes retrace ancient routes, proving continuity rather than rediscovery. Young navigators learn the same stars. The ocean responds the same way. Knowledge survives through practice. The Pacific remains a living classroom. From island chains to open horizons, the story of the first Pacific sailors reminds us that exploration does not require domination, only understanding built slowly through observation, cooperation, and courage. Their journeys demonstrate that curiosity guided by preparation can transform emptiness into connection. They show that the largest ocean on Earth became a shared world because humans chose learning over fear. As this chapter closes, the Pacific stands not as a silent barrier, but as a woven network of memory and movement, still carrying echoes of paddles, stars, and voices that once trusted the horizon enough to follow it.